Concealed identities broke into their home. Babis, abruptly awakened, was overpowered, blindfolded, and restrained with duct tape. As he struggled to make sense of the chaos, the intruders turned their attention to Caroline. The men, speaking with Greek and Albanian accents, demanded to know where the couple's money was hidden. Babis revealed the cash's location inside a Monopoly board game box. The intruders retrieved the money, but their greed and malice drove them to ransack the house further, searching for more valuables. Amid the chaos, Caroline resisted, pleading for the safety of her infant daughter. Her resistance enraged the intruders, who murdered her in cold blood. The violence escalated to a horrific level when the family's pet husky was strangled with its own leash and hung from the staircase. Babis, slipping in and out of consciousness due to his restraints, awoke to a haunting silence broken only by the cries of his daughter. Mustering all his strength, he managed to reach his phone and, using his nose, dialed emergency services. His muffled plea for help, "Robbers came in," was all he could manage. First responders arrived at the scene around 6 a.m., uncovering a nightmare. The house was in shambles, with belongings strewn everywhere and a security camera torn from the wall. The camera's memory card was missing, adding to the mystery. Caroline's lifeless body lay face down on the bed, while her infant daughter sat beside her, crying and clapping, attempting to wake her mother. The brutal murder of Caroline Crouch and the apparent robbery shocked Greece and the world. The sight of the strangled puppy added a grotesque layer to the crime, evoking widespread outrage. Yet, the unfolding investigation would reveal even darker truths. What initially appeared to be a robbery gone wrong turned into one of Greece's most shocking cases of domestic violence. Evidence began to unravel Babis's account of the events, leading investigators to a grim conclusion. The fairy tale romance had masked a chilling reality. When first responders arrived at the crime scene, they immediately observed Caroline's pale, lifeless body and determined she had been murdered. Her husband, Babis, was visibly shaken when freed from his restraints and confronted with the tragic sight of his wife, the woman he had loved for the past 5 years. After ensuring the safety of the couple's infant, police began interrogating Babis. Based on his account and the state of the crime scene, it was determined that 4 men were involved. Investigators concluded that 3 intruders had entered the house, while a 4th stood guard outside. The police interpreted the events leading up to Caroline's murder as follows. The intruders approached the house through a dirt road leading to the rear entrance. They attempted to break in through the rear door but failed, resorting instead to removing the security pins from a basement window to gain entry. Upon entering the maisonette, the intruders killed the family's 7-month-old husky, Roxy, using her own leash. The 3 men then made their way to the main bedroom, where Babis and Caroline were asleep. They ransacked the house, ultimately stealing 10,000 euros in cash and jewelry worth 20,000 euros hidden in a Monopoly box. Before leaving, the intruders murdered Caroline by smothering her with a pillow. Babis, who drifted in and out of consciousness due to his restraints, was likely presumed dead by the intruders, who believed they had left no witnesses. Caroline's death was not instantaneous. The 20-year-old suffered a prolonged attack lasting around 6 minutes. Bruises across her body suggested she fought back fiercely, while injuries to her lips and tongue hinted at the possible use of sharp objects. However, no evidence of sexual assault was found. Despite the significant damage inflicted on the house, the intruders left little evidence behind. First responders discovered only a single clue: the hood of one of the attackers. Babis claimed the hood had fallen off during a brief struggle, giving him a fleeting glimpse of one of the men. Using his description, authorities created a sketch of the suspect, an overweight, tall, dark-skinned man. Babis also noted that the intruders carried 2 firearms, a black pistol and a silver Colt. Police surmised that the crime was premeditated, as the intruders seemed aware of the hidden money and waited for the opportune moment to strike. A police spokesperson described the crime as exceptionally brutal and attributed it to individuals with a strong antisocial personality and a complete lack of empathy. While investigators were certain the attack was planned, many questions remained unanswered. If robbery was the primary motive, why was Caroline murdered? Was it possible the intruders were high on drugs and lost control of their actions? Could Caroline have recognized or seen the attackers, prompting them to kill her? Did Caroline resist and fight back, given her training as a black belt kickboxer? Did the murder occur because Caroline screamed when one of the intruders held a gun to her infant's temple? Police believe the gang had received a tip about the couple's finances. Investigations extended to Babis and Caroline's inner circle, as well as local security camera footage from nearby homes and businesses. The goal was to identify any suspicious activity leading up to the crime. Despite numerous speculations, one fact was clear. This crime was deliberate, calculated, and carried out by professionals who left a trail of heartbreak and unanswered questions in their wake. The murder of Caroline Crouch shook Greece to its core, leaving the public and investigators alike desperate for answers. On the morning of the murder, police identified a dark-colored vehicle and a motorcycle cruising around the couple's house. This detail hinted at a premeditated plan, but offered little clarity. Caroline Crouch was laid to rest 3 days later on the Greek island of Anagnostopoulos, a place filled with cherished memories of her childhood and her parents' love story. During the emotional ceremony, her husband, Babis Anagnostopoulos, paid tribute to Caroline, describing her as the joy of his life and the devoted mother of their daughter. He expressed his heartbreak, knowing that their daughter would grow up never remembering her mother. While the memorial unfolded, a significant development took place. In northeast Greece, near the Bulgarian border, police stopped a car during a routine check. Inside was 36-year-old Georgian national Georgi Haradishvili. He presented a passport, which was soon identified as fake. Haradishvili was a violent criminal with a history of multiple convictions, including 12 break-ins across Athens over the past 6 months. His crimes included violent robberies, one of which eerily resembled the method used in Caroline's murder. This led investigators to suspect him. In one incident in December, Haradishvili and his accomplices broke into a house through a rear window, dragging the female occupant by the hair and threatening to slit her throat. In another robbery on March 7th, they tied up multiple victims, including an elderly couple and a cleaning lady, stealing cash and valuables. Haradishvili's description closely matched a sketch based on Babis' account of the intruder, further fueling suspicions. Haradishvili was arrested and interrogated intensively over 4 days. Despite physical pressure, he denied any involvement, maintaining that he had never heard of Caroline Crouch. Eventually, the evidence against him proved insufficient. He was cleared of all charges, leading to the demotion of 3 officers from the Athens homicide squad. With Haradishvili eliminated as a suspect, the investigation shifted focus to a local Albanian organized crime group. Police initially compiled a list of 100 suspects, which was later narrowed to 10 individuals from the Red List, a registry of known criminals. Mugshots were shown to Babis, but no definitive progress was made. As the case dragged on, public frustration mounted. The lack of DNA, fingerprints, or any solid leads added to the mystery. Experts and media speculated that this was no ordinary crime. Even a substantial monetary reward failed to generate useful tips. Fear gripped Athens as residents worried about the possibility of becoming the next victims. Throughout this period, Babis maintained a public presence, actively engaging on social media and supporting the police's efforts. He repeatedly stated his hope that no one else would endure such a tragedy, using the media to keep Caroline's case in the spotlight. Caroline's family, meanwhile, expressed gratitude for the continued pursuit of justice. A breakthrough finally came on June 17th, 37 days after Caroline's murder. During a small memorial service for Caroline on Anagnostopoulos, detectives discreetly approached Babis. They requested that he accompany them to Athens, citing new developments in the case. Unaware of what lay ahead, Babis agreed. By this time, investigators had meticulously analyzed key details from the night of the murder. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, and the truth was closer than ever. The case of Caroline and Babis began as a tragic story of a supposed home invasion, but unraveled into a chilling narrative of manipulation, control, and betrayal. The initial details provided by Babis to the police raised numerous red flags. Babis claimed that intruders had broken into their home through a basement window. However, the window was too small for anyone of the physique he described. He also alleged that the house had been ransacked, yet neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual that night, only the distressed cries of the couple's puppy. There were no sounds of a struggle, no cries for help, and no crying infant. The house showed no evidence of fingerprints or DNA. Babis suggested that the intruders had removed the memory card from the living room security camera, but data from the camera revealed that the card had been removed at 1:20 a.m., hours before the alleged break-in. This discrepancy raised further doubts about his version of events. Caroline was wearing a smartwatch that monitored her vital signs. Data from the device revealed that she was asleep at 3:30 a.m. At 4:05 a.m., her pulse spiked, indicating severe physical and mental stress. By 4:11 a.m., her heart had stopped, well before the time Babis claimed the murder occurred. Meanwhile, data from Babis Fitness app showed he was moving around during the time he was supposedly tied up by the intruders. Additionally, police were unable to replicate his claim of dialing emergency services while bound. Further investigations uncovered more troubling details. Caroline had attempted to book a hotel room for herself and her daughter on the night she was killed. A text message to a friend revealed she was threatening to leave Babis. The couple's history painted a stark contrast to their social media facade. Babis, charismatic and financially stable, had wooed Caroline with grand gestures, including flying a helicopter over her school. They eloped when Caroline was still underage, marrying just 3 days after her 18th birthday. What seemed like a romantic escape was, in hindsight, an attempt to isolate her from her support system. Caroline's diary revealed the darker side of their relationship. Entries detailed fights, manipulative behavior, and her growing doubts. She described Babis as controlling, taking even the money her mother sent to support her. Despite her unhappiness, she felt trapped, especially after becoming pregnant. "I stayed with him so my daughter would not grow up without her two parents," she wrote. A July 2020 entry marked her breaking point. "Today my little one is a month old. It's also the day I told Babis I want to leave. I feel awful." As police pieced together the evidence, a different picture emerged. The supposed fairy tale romance had devolved into an abyss of control, despair, and eventual tragedy. Caroline's attempts to escape were thwarted by her circumstances and Babis' manipulative grip. The very man who promised her a dream life turned out to be the architect of her nightmare, one that would ultimately lead to her death. The cracks in Babis and Caroline's relationship were undeniable. Hours before her murder, phone records revealed argumentative and combative texts exchanged between them while they were at home. It was a chilling testament to the distance and dysfunction that had come to define their lives. Babis became the prime suspect in the case when investigators confronted him with overwhelming and irrefutable evidence that dismantled his earlier claims. The inconsistencies in his story became glaringly apparent. After an 8-hour interrogation, he finally broke down, but even then, his confession was riddled with fabrication. Babis claimed the arguments began on May 10th, the night before the murder. According to him, the couple's disputes were centered around their daughter. Caroline, he alleged, was determined to take the child and leave him. He described this as a devastating blow, insisting that the child was his whole life. Babis painted a picture of escalating tensions, claiming that Caroline had thrown the infant into the cot, ordered him to leave the house, and resorted to physical abuse by pushing and punching him. He said his judgment became clouded in the heat of the moment. He lashed out, strangling her and pressing a pillow against her face with his full body weight until she was dead. A cold-blooded murder committed in front of their 11-month-old child. After the murder, Babis confessed to deliberating over what to do with Caroline's body, but quickly abandoned the idea of disposing of it. Instead, He devised a plan to stage a home invasion. To make the scene convincing, he killed the family dog, Roxy, placed his infant daughter next to Caroline's corpse, and tied himself up with rope and duct tape to feign being a victim. In his confession, Babis expressed that he deserved punishment and owed an apology to everyone he had hurt. Yet, he attempted to shift blame onto Caroline, portraying himself as a man driven to instability and aggression after becoming a father. The truth, however, told a different story. Investigators found that Babis had become so confident in his ability to cover up the murder that he didn't bother destroying key evidence. His staged home invasion fell apart under scrutiny. In May 2022, Babis was charged and found guilty of premeditated murder, lying to authorities, obstructing justice, and animal abuse. The horrifying case earned the moniker, "The Murder That Fooled the World." Now, the couple's child is left to grow up without her mother, a mother whose life was brutally ended by the man she once loved. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the irreversible damage wrought by deception, violence, and betrayal.
This was today's true story. Our aim is for people to learn from such incidents and strive to improve society. Do let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.